If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people, if you've ever swallowed tears because the world moved too fast to notice your pain, then stay with me until the end of this story. And if stories about second chances and unexpected kindness touch your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes a single story can change the way we see the world. Snow fell softly over the streets of Chicago on Christmas Eve, turning sidewalks into silver ribbons under the streetlights. Store windows glowed with warmth, families hurried by carrying wrapped gifts, and laughter spilled from restaurants and crowded homes. It was the kind of night that looked magical, unless you were standing outside it. Elena Morris stood alone at a bus stop, her thin coat doing little to block the cold. Her dark hair was dusted with snowflakes, melting against her cheeks like quiet tears. She was 34 years old, and for most of her life, she had learned how to survive in silence. Elena had been deaf since birth. The world she lived in was one of vibrations, expressions, and shadows of sound she could feel but never hear. She worked as a seamstress in a small tailoring shop downtown, where her hands spoke more fluently than most mouths ever could. Fabric listened to her, needles obeyed her, patterns made sense, people did not. Her parents had passed away 5 years earlier in a car accident. Since then, holidays had become unbearable reminders of the voices she once saw laughing around the dinner table, the hands that once signed, "We love you." Her older brother had moved overseas and slowly drifted out of her life. Texts became rare, video calls stopped, silence, even in her world, had layers, and this was the heaviest kind. This Christmas Eve, she had worked a double shift. Her boss, though not unkind, had assumed she didn't have family plans. He was right. When the shop closed early, Elena didn't rush anywhere. She simply walked, letting the snow settle around her as the city prepared to celebrate without her. At the bus stop, she checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls, just a bright wallpaper photo of her and her parents from years ago, all of them smiling in a way that made her chest ache. A few feet away stood a man and a little girl. The man was tall, with tired eyes but a gentle face. He held grocery bags in one hand and his daughter's mittened fingers in the other. The little girl, maybe 6 years old, was bundled in a pink coat and hat, bouncing slightly with excitement. Her name was Sophie Carter. Her father, Daniel Carter, had been raising her alone since his wife passed away 2 years earlier from an aggressive illness. Christmas had once been his wife's favorite holiday. Now it felt like walking through memories barefoot on broken glass. But he tried. For Sophie, he always tried. Sophie noticed Elena first. Children have a way of seeing what adults overlook. She tugged at her father's coat and pointed. Elena was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, but silently, shoulders trembling, tears slipping down her cheeks as snow blurred her vision. Daniel followed his daughter's gaze. At first, he assumed she was on a phone call or simply overwhelmed. Then he noticed something else. Elena wasn't reacting to the noise around her. A car backfired nearby, she didn't flinch. A group of teenagers laughed loudly behind her, she didn't turn. Daniel felt something click in his mind. He had learned basic American Sign Language years ago when his wife volunteered at a community center for the deaf. He wasn't fluent, but he remembered enough. He hesitated. Approaching a crying stranger on Christmas Eve could be awkward, intrusive, misunderstood. But Sophie tugged his hand again, her big brown eyes insistent. "Daddy," she whispered, "she's sad." Daniel swallowed. Then he gently handed Sophie one of the grocery bags and stepped closer to Elena, careful not to startle her. He moved into her line of sight and raised his hand slowly in a small wave. Elena blinked, startled, and quickly wiped her tears. Daniel took a breath and began to sign, his movements slightly clumsy but clear enough. "Are you okay?" Elena froze. Her eyes widened, searching his hands, then his face. She hadn't expected anyone, especially a stranger, to reach into her world like that. She hesitated before signing back, slower than usual, unsure of his skill level. "I'm fine." Daniel recognized the lie immediately. He gave a small, understanding smile. Sophie stepped beside him, peeking up at Elena with open curiosity. Daniel signed again, carefully forming each word. "It's Christmas Eve. No one should cry alone." The sentence was imperfect in grammar, but perfect in intention. Elena's composure shattered. Fresh tears spilled over, and she looked down, embarrassed. She hadn't meant to cry in public. She hadn't meant for anyone to notice. Sophie suddenly released her father's hand and did something neither adult expected. She reached out and hugged Elena around the waist. Elena stiffened at first, then slowly melted into the small embrace. She felt the warmth of the child's coat, the tiny arms squeezing with uncomplicated kindness. It had been so long since someone had held her without hesitation. Daniel signed again, more carefully this time. We are going home, just us. Dinner. Tree. It's small, but warm. He paused, searching for the right signs he hadn't used in years. Then he finished. Come home with us. Elena stared at him, her mind raced. This was a stranger. She had been taught to be cautious, to protect herself. The world wasn't always kind to women alone, especially women who couldn't hear danger approaching. But she looked at Sophie, who was still holding onto her coat like she had no intention of letting go. She looked at Daniel, whose eyes held no pity, only sincerity. The bus arrived behind them, brakes hissing. People boarded, doors closed. It pulled away. Elena realized she had missed it. Daniel didn't move. He didn't pressure her. He simply waited. Finally, with trembling hands, Elena signed, "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. Yes. And that was how a deaf woman who expected to spend Christmas Eve alone found herself walking through the snow beside a single father and his daughter toward a small brick house glowing with yellow light. Inside, the Carter home was modest but cozy. A slightly crooked Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments. The scent of cinnamon and roasted chicken filled the air. Sophie immediately began showing Elena her drawings, her toys, her favorite ornament shaped like a star. Daniel set the groceries down and gestured for Elena to sit. He found a notepad and pen and placed them on the coffee table, just in case. Communication flowed in a mix of basic sign language, written notes, and expressive gestures. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As they ate dinner, Daniel signed stories about Sophie's school, about burning last year's turkey, about learning sign language from his late wife. Elena shared, slowly at first, about her tailoring job, about her parents, about how silence during the holidays felt louder than any noise. At one point, Sophie climbed into Elena's lap and asked her father to talk with hands again. Daniel laughed and signed, "Sophie says you are beautiful." Elena's cheeks flushed. No one had called her that in a very long time. Later, they exchanged small gifts. Sophie insisted Elena open one of her own presents, a knitted scarf Daniel had made. "We can share," Sophie signed clumsily, mimicking her father. Elena couldn't stop smiling. The house felt alive in a way her apartment never did. She watched Daniel carefully, noticing how patient he was with his daughter, how he made sure Elena could see his face when he signed, how he never once treated her like she was fragile. When it was time to leave, Elena felt the old fear creeping back, the fear of returning to an empty apartment, to cold walls and quiet shadows. Daniel seemed to sense it. He signed slowly, deliberately. "You don't have to be alone again. Not just tonight. We can be friends." Friends. The word settled in her heart like a seed. Over the following weeks, that seed began to grow. Elena started coming over for Sunday dinners. Daniel practiced sign language every night after Sophie went to bed. Sophie learned quickly, her small hands forming words with joyful determination. They helped Elena fix a loose cabinet in her apartment. She mended Daniel's worn winter coat. They visited a local deaf community event together. Daniel realized how little he truly understood about her world, and how much he wanted to learn. Spring arrived, melting the last traces of winter. What began as a single act of kindness on a snowy bus stop turned into something neither of them had expected. One evening, months later, as they watched Sophie chase fireflies in the backyard, Daniel turned to Elena and signed with far more confidence than before, "That night, I thought I was helping you. But you saved us too." Elena tilted her head, questioning. He continued, "Our house was quiet after my wife died. Not silent like yours, but empty. You brought life back." Tears filled her eyes again, but these were different tears. Not of loneliness, of belonging. She signed back, "You saw me." Daniel nodded. "Always." A year after that Christmas Eve, Elena stood in the same living room, now filled with more decorations, more laughter, more shared memories. Sophie, now 7, proudly announced she could sign the entire alphabet without mistakes. And when Daniel took Elena's hands and signed, "Will you marry me?" Sophie clapped wildly before Elena could even answer. This time, Elena didn't hesitate. Yes, because sometimes miracles don't arrive with trumpets or fireworks. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through clumsy hands forming imperfect signs at a bus stop in the snow. So if you ever see someone standing alone in the cold, physically or emotionally, remember this story. A single moment of courage can rewrite someone's entire future. Kindness is a language anyone can learn. And no one deserves to cry alone on Christmas Eve. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope can appear in the most unexpected places, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because the world needs more stories about love that listens, hearts that see, and hands that speak. And somewhere out there, someone might just be waiting for you to sign, "Come home with us."